Puccini had what I think is a marvelous, marvelous sense of theater. Verdi, the sense of, you know, just incredible bigness, grand opera, huge spectacles. Puccini, sense of theater. We'll hear themes, you know, more than once. When Mimi walks in the room, we're going to hear that theme again. You know, so in a way, Puccini really controls us with the melody, and that's one of the reasons why I think we like it. He knew when to introduce new musical material, or possibly a moment of silence. You know, his melodies are short. We remember them and we retain them very easily. I'm sure after you hear this La Boheme segment, you'll be singing it in the shower tomorrow. We're also looking at, technically, let me just tell you that Verdi and Puccini also were minimizing the difference between an aria and a recitative, right? And so this whole idea of that separation's kind of going by the wayside, and we're looking for now at a continuous flow of music, which I think is very interesting. We also have an incredible, intense view of love in these operas. And I don't think you can get it anywhere else any better. And so those of you who think I'm wrong, go out there, buy a CD, look at the text, look what you're listening to, and see if you can identify it. And that's how opera became my best friend. Oh my God, I can totally identify with Tosca. I can totally identify with what she's singing. And it's like me. It's me all over the page. And so that's how people really can identify with it, because you can identify with it personally. La Boheme, 1896. 1896. Bohemian life takes place in the Latin Quarter of Paris. And it is the beginning of around 1830, the early 19th century. And the hero is Rodolfo. Rodolfo is the young poet who shares a garret with Marcello, who is a painter, Colline, who's a philosopher, and Schaunard, a musician. And Mimi, you see, the heroine, is poor, and you're going to find out that she's sick. She's sick. So basically, boy meets girl, girl gets sick, girl dies. And so we can all relate to those characters, and we can all relate to those emotions. And so I will leave you with La Boheme. This is during Act 1. Rodolfo meets her, her candle has gone out. Poor Mimi. And right there, people, you should know she's gonna die, right? Her candle goes out. That's just a wonderful visual to have. And Rodolfo sings this aria about himself. She sings an aria about herself. And they're in love. 10, 12 minutes, they're in love. Oh, ho, ho, ho. That's very funny. But we all want to believe that this kind of silliness exists somewhere. With all of the stuff, turn on the news, people. We all want to believe that this innocence really does exist. And what's even more beautiful is, Rodolfo hears his friends, come on, let's go to the cafe. And he said, no, I'm not alone up here. And then he turns to Mimi, and they sing the beautiful theme that we have already heard in Rodolfo's aria. And then they go off stage, and in the background you hear love 3 times, one that goes up to a high A, and they end the act by flying up to a high C, which has tremendous difficulty involved when you have just sang an entire act, and then you have to do that. And so enjoy this La Boheme, Act 1 by Giacomo Puccini.
Non sono in vena, chi è là? Una donna.
We have talked about Italian opera. Now we have to go to the other country. You love him, you hate him. Richard Wagner, 1813 to 1883. If I didn't have to talk about him, I wouldn't give him the time, but I have to. He wasn't a very nice man, but he certainly, his music had a very powerful impact on the Romantic period and composers and artists to come. And so I have got to talk about Richard Wagner. During the last decades of the 19th century, his operas and artistic philosophy influenced not only musicians, composers, poets, painters, and playwrights. His preeminence within the opera house was he actually had an opera house built for him in Germany, solely for the performances of his music. He was born in Leipzig, Germany. His father died when he was very young, and his stepfather was a musician. And his boyhood dream, get this, was to be a poet or a playwright. But at 15, he was overwhelmed by the power, and I mean with a capital P, power, of Beethoven's music. He was self-taught. He really did not have much training in music theory, and he never tried to master an instrument. I do not think that I have talked about a composer yet who really didn't have some kind of mastery of an instrument. When he was 17, he enrolled in Leipzig University, but while there, he was much more interested in being a crazy student and gambling and drinking. We can delete the first one as far as crazy student as he grows up, but gambling is always going to be a problem for Mr. Wagner up until his death. As a matter of fact, there were many warrants for his arrest in regards to his gambling problem. Gambler, womanizer, user, anti-Semite, racist, but boy, he was a genius. During his early 20s, Wagner conducted some small German theater. He wrote operas and didn't really have that much success. And so what he thought he'd do is he'd move to Paris. And this was a huge city of culture, as we know, from talking about Chopin and Liszt and Berlioz. And so he goes to Paris, and he fails miserably. He's unable to get an opera performed. He racked up many bills, and he was briefly actually confined to debtor's prison. So this was not a good thing. The other thing I'm going to bring in here very briefly is that he was very angry about one of the great composers of French opera, who was the guy in Paris. His name was Meyerbeer. He also was a Jew. And he really, really angered Wagner. And Wagner will go on to not only be, a great composer of opera, but he will also write many essays, Opera and Drama, Art and Revolution. Why Jews can't be composers. Go right in the library and read it. Anger. Anger, hatred, fear. Hitler's favorite composer was Wagner. And it is very interesting to try to relate the two. From what I could read, I don't know how. I just think it's German music and the fatherland and the master race. Maybe that comes into play. But I do think it's very interesting that a lot of people make this connection. He was an avid anti-Semite, however. And Wagner returned to Germany in 1842, and he supervised the production of his opera, Rienzi, at the Dresden Opera. He was recognized for this opera, and it was immensely successful, and he was actually appointed conductor of the Dresden Opera. This was a big deal for him, and the job paid him very well. He spent 6 years there as both composer and conductor, and he demanded that the orchestra play with huge dynamics and rhythmic freedom. And when he conducts, a musician observed, he is almost beside himself with excitement. Every sinew in his body speaks. His whole appearance is of arrogance and despotism personified. The revolutions of 1848 swept across Europe like crazy, and marked a turning point in Wagner's career. His life in Dresden had become increasingly difficult, and because he had accumulated debts, he had to basically run away. Hoping that a new society would wipe out his debts and produce conditions favorable to his art, Wagner participated in the Dresden insurrection. In other words, going against the government. So he was a member of this young revolutionary party that was going on there. And when a warrant was issued for his arrest, he fled to Switzerland. And for years, he did no composing, and he wrote essays. And I'll say it again, Art and Revolution in 1849, The Artwork of the Future in 1850, Opera and Drama in 1851. More important, however, is that he completed his librettos. Now, I don't think I've said this yet, but Wagner wrote his own librettos. That, my friends, is amazing, that he composed his own texts to his opera. What are these operas about? They are about German or Nordic legend. They are, of course, mythological gods and demigods, right? How different is that from Italian opera, right? Remember, woman gets sick, woman meets man, woman gets sick, woman dies, right? Now we have something very different, right? So it is a very different kind of opera. An amazing landmark in music is, I should say, Wagner's cycle of 4 operas. He wrote a cycle of 4 operas called The Ring of the Nibelung. Yippee, right? What? Say that again. What is that? It's a cycle of 4 operas. In other words, it's a mini-series. It's a mini-series. It's a lot of hours of music. A lot. The plots are so intricate, people. It's about a ring, and it's about immortality and where the ring goes, and half-brothers and gods and goddesses. This one dies, and at the end, even the gods die, you know? So it's like, it's too much. And if I could explain it, it would take a very, very long time. So please know that this one, it was an amazing feat in the history of music to put these, it's like 20 hours of music together. 4 operas. Usually they are done separately, however. And so what we have here within Wagner's music is also something very amazing, and I need to talk about his music. I am not going to require you to listen to it, however. For Wagner, an opera house was a temple. It was a temple for the spectator to be overwhelmed by music and drama. And right there, something has changed. Because Wagner's music is not called opera. Well, what's it called? It's called a music drama. It's called a music drama, where drama and music are one. And I'm going to say a big word here. There's a word that we use to describe Wagner's operas that he used as well, Gesamtwerk, which means total artwork. And that's what he envisioned. Opera as a piece of total artwork, where you're combining all of the arts. Now, he did not want the music to be subservient to the drama. The error in the art genre of opera consists in the fact that a means of expression, music, has been made the object, while the object of expression, the drama, has been made the means. And you see, what happens is he takes them both together and he intimately fuses them. There are no breaks in the music at all. At all. There's no recitative aria, really. It just flows continuously. Now, we often refer to Wagner's music as having what I call, what the book calls as well, an unending melody. Unending melody. And this is going to lead into something, okay? And I'm going to say it right here, the beginning of the breakdown of tonality. Okay, so try to follow me here. If a melody never ends, what does that mean? Remember the first class, or second class, we talked about a central tone? that's where we end, right? Well, with Wagner, we just go somewhere else. And so the idea of an unending melody is something like this. And you all laugh at me, and I'm sure my colleagues will laugh at me. But this is the way he would do something. Now, when I talked about central tone before, I talked about Mary Had a Little Lamb. So that's what I'm going to use. So let's say Wagner's doing Mary Had a Little Lamb. Something like that. In other words, he never gets to that place. He just keeps going off. Now, with this idea of non-resolution, we're going into some very interesting areas here. And we're only talking about the middle of the 19th century that he's doing this. He's blurring harmonic progressions. He's blurring that central tone. And we are coming upon this very quickly. Our major-minor system is starting to get a little funky here. This is the beginnings of it. Many people say that Wagner's operas, music dramas, are the beginnings of modernism. This is going to lead the way into the 20th century. Also, very interesting within the operas, he uses what's called a leitmotif. Okay? A leitmotif is a musical motive that is associated with a character, idea, or an object. For example, a little musical motive for a tree, or a ring, or lust, or love, or a kiss, or a candle, or leaf, or right toenail. He would have a musical motive for all of these things. So you don't even need to watch it. You could just listen to each musical motive and you know what's going on in the opera. This is very interesting that he did this. And so with this idea of leitmotif and the unending melody, we also have a huge orchestra. There was actually a tuba called a Wagnerian tuba, a Wagner tuba. We have Wagnerian sopranos, a certain kind of voice. The Wagnerian female singer and male singers are very, very different. You really can't be a great Mozart singer and then go sing Wagner. It's a different kind of voice. It's stamina. These operas are long, people. Long, 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 long. 4.5, 5 hours of opera. You love them, you hate them. Again, Richard Wagner. Now, I have some interesting quotes because, I just don't think I'm giving you guys the right picture here. I like Wagner. I agree with Rossini, the great opera composer Rossini, and he says of Mr. Wagner, Monsieur Wagner has beautiful moments, but awful quarter hours. And that's exactly how I feel about Wagner myself. I don't love it, and I understand why the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra gets paid a pretty good amount of money. To play Wagner you need a chiropractor. I mean, you need a chiropractor. It's such heavy, heavy music. And I have some quotes that I think are very interesting. And this is from Nietzsche, the great philosopher. Is Wagner a human being at all? Is he not rather a disease? He contaminates everything he touches. He has made music sick. I postulate this viewpoint. Wagner's art is a disease. J.B. Morton, the writer, says this of Wagner. Wagner is the Puccini of music. I thought that was also very interesting. Mark Twain. Wagner's music is better than it sounds. Oscar Wilde. I like Wagner's music better than anybody's. It is so loud that one can talk the whole time without other people hearing what one says. So that gives you a little insight. Gives you a little insight about Wagner. If you like this wonderfully heavy music, go for it. Just go for it. There are also some concert works of Wagner that we can play little scenes of his operas, and they are wonderful. And he was an incredible genius. and did. Again, you have to talk about somebody when he influences everyone that comes after. Claude Debussy, who we'll talk about, related to the Impressionist movement in France, he called Wagner's operas a bunch of long-winded hooey. But he himself admitted that he could not escape the influence. Nobody could. And we're going to, and I'm going to say it, I'll say it again, this comes right up the Wagner line, the whole idea of this of non-resolution, the central tone. We're going to start to break apart now. Okay? All right, so Richard Wagner, you take him or you leave him. You decide. Okay? That will be the end of the discussion of romantic music. And so what I'd like to do now is give you a review for test number 4. A review. Okay, everybody, welcome to test number 4. Number 4. This is the Romantic period, 1827 to 1900, and very different from the Classical period, right? The Classical period, balance, order, and proportion. And now we have individuality, emotion, and imagination. The Romantic composers did not stick to strict rules. These rules that we had from the Classical period are going to break apart and explode. We have extremes, we have spontaneity, we have the emphasis on the literary and how the literary is going to end up in music, okay? Very important. We have some new developments. Let's talk about the new genres first. We talked about the development of the art song, or the Lied in German, and it is a musical setting of a poem for voice and piano. I talked about the art song in relation to Franz Schubert, who composed over 600 art songs. He's a Viennese composer, and our example was the Earl King. The Earl King. The next important genre we talked about was in relation to the piano. We talked about two composers in relation to the piano, Chopin and Liszt, right? Chopin, born in Poland, Liszt, born in Hungary. And we talked about character pieces, short, free piano pieces that evoke a mood or atmosphere. And we know that Chopin and Liszt came from two different schools of composing for the piano. Chopin, the poet of the piano, enchanted the listener with charm and elegance, and Liszt was going to astound you with dazzling technique. And we also know that because they're different, their cultures were different, we have different pieces that are associated with their country. Chopin composed polonaises and mazurkas and things like that, native to the country of Poland. And Liszt composed Hungarian dances and other pieces that were native to his country. We also talked about program music, right? Music associated with a non-musical idea. We talked about Berlioz' Symphonie Fantastique. Symphonie Fantastique, a 5-movement symphony, right, based on hallucinations, right, of the actress Harriet Smithson, right? Those were his dreams. And it is a piece of program music. And the whole piece is based on a fixed idea. It is a melody that keeps coming back in each movement, right? Called the fixed idea, or in French called the idée fixe. And why is this piece unusual for 1830? It was a huge orchestra. Beethoven only been dead for 3 years, and it is a huge orchestra. And then we went on to talk about opera, Italian romantic opera, Puccini and Verdi, and how we have an emphasis on melody and you can really relate to it. It is very, very human, not only the characters, but as the plots as well. And we talked about Wagner as well, mythological themes, and he created a new type of opera called the music drama. We talked about specifically the leitmotif, a musical motive associated with an idea, character, or emotion. And we talked about how this idea of the unending melody and the non-resolution, it begins the breakdown of tonality or a tonal system. And again, this was just the beginnings. Don't get me wrong that all of a sudden we're going to have atonality in 1850. No, that wasn't it at all. But it's starting to happen at this point. We also talked about nationalism and how composers were composing music in relation to their country. And we talked about two different composers, Dvorak, who is a Czech composer, and we talked about his New World Symphony, which actually combines the American spirit as well as the Czech spirit. Russian composer Tchaikovsky, and that he had a very tragic life, composed music for the ballet, and we looked at the overture fantasy, Romeo and Juliet. And so as you are taking these tests, may I remind you that your final is comprehensive. We only have one more test before your final. And so make sure you're able to now divide music by era, right? Because the final you'll have to choose from Middle Ages, Baroque, Classical, and Romantic now. So make sure you're starting to keep that straight. Okay, so this is test number 4, the Romantic period. So I'll see you there, and good luck.